Terrarian in the Dungeon, Chapter 3, Fan Fiction by Azazyel. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel for listening and patreon.com/Azazyel to read all of his stories. It turned out that Seshat's domain of craftsmanship/architecture was no joke, as the end product armor pieces were made out of naught, but would literally had the warding epitaph, which was the best add-on as it added an extra defense rating points to the armor, and with it being only wood armor to begin with. Yeah, a full set of wooden armor with the warding addon was more than double its actual value in defense points, honestly. In the following morning, after a hearty breakfast, Seshat offered to help me get ready for my first day on the job. This is bullshit. How are you better at using my cheat than myself? I spoke dryly as the goddess helped suit me up in the armor, and hearing my words she tittered, and as she moved to check if the back of the chest plate was on correctly, she flicked me in the nose with her long leopard tail. Heh. I coughed at the surprise attack. What if I am allergic to you? I whined, and she huffed and slapped the back of my armor. Bah, quit being a baby and get going, go do your mortal paperwork announcing yourself as my child, and then make me proud in the dungeon. She said as she spun around to my front and grabbed the front of my chest plate and pulled my head to lay against her own, so I was absorbed in her slit amber eyes. Do not die in the dungeon, Jake Barris. I don't have a domain to do with the dead, so finding you in Tenkai will be a pain in the ass if your soul isn't just destroyed for being foreign to the system of reincarnation, to begin with. She said dryly at the end and let go of me, with my form straightening up from the bent-over position she pulled me into. Yeah. I have no plans on dying. In the worst case I can always go the lichdom route or something. I muttered with Seshat scoffing, but had an interested look on her face, and with the Egyptian pantheon being so death-related I wasn't surprised she would know of such a thing. I then left Seshat's perch and the goddess within to head off to the guild. Arriving back at the guild, I saw that Rose Fennett actually had a bit of line, as apparently she wasn't at all a morning person. So, the crimson-haired dog girl beauty was merely sleepily glaring at the people who flocked to her line, as she honestly looked cute rather than scary. Then, seeing a rather empty line, I headed to that receptionist, even though I couldn't see them through the line of adventurers who were handing in materials and just generally taking some paperwork to work on their own time. But after a few minutes, I could only blink as I saw the rather familiar receptionist, a half-elf wearing the standard guild attire that was quickly and efficiently working through the whole line of people. For a moment I thought about leaving the line, but I realized that would be weird as hell, and it's not like I could be sucked into Bell's sphere of influence and mayhem simply by getting my paperwork from his guild advisor Ina Tool. Good morning. What can I do for you today? She spoke cheerfully, and I coughed at her honestly enthusiastic greeting this early in the morning. Yeah, I would like to register myself as the first member of my familia. Do I need to do anything special? I asked, and she hurriedly nodded before she rang a bell above her little window with the voice of someone in the back yelling out how they were coming. Yup. In fact, there is a lot for us to do. We got to get your familia in the system as an exploration familia, even if it was a crafting one previously, and then we need to get your personal information down, plus as the first member of your familia you are entitled to the services of a guild advisor at no additional costs other than paying your guild taxes on time. Ina explained clearly as another guild receptionist came out of the back and took Ina's place. Here, follow me into one of the meeting rooms so we can get this straightened out, Ina spoke as she walked through the back side of the guild reception area until she reached a gate for her to exit, and then she led me into one of the side rooms. The side meeting room was rather sparsely decorated, being only furnished with a couple of couches and a rather tall table between the couches. For people to obviously do paperwork without bending over. Please take a seat, she said, gently pointing to the right side couch, and then she continued to speak as she organized the small stack of paperwork. My name is Ina Tool. Depending on your paperwork I may or may not be your guild advisor, so it's nice to meet you. She offered with a nod in my direction, and knowing how elves and even half-elves were very particular in who they allowed to touch them, I nodded in return. My name is Jake Barris, and I will entrust myself in your care if that ends up being the case, I said as I leaned forward to take in the small stack of papers she handed to me. Thankfully I could read and even write this world's language, or at least it was just auto-translated into my mind as English. Either way I didn't think too hard about it, and was just glad I wasn't completely illiterate. All you have to do is sign at dotted lines with X's next to them, the rest of them are unfortunately for me, having formally recognized you and your familia as being an exploration familia. Make sure you fill out the info on what kind of guild advisor you would prefer. Don't just write, whatever, it's fine, I can handle anything, Ina said, putting on a kind of macho voice making me chuckle. So, I can write, I would prefer a cute half-elf, I teased, and she rolled her eyes at my harmless flirting joke as she could tell I was just joking. If you do write something like that, you will be automatically slotted to have our Amazon advisor, and she was once an adventurer, who now takes great joy in beating the lessons on how to survive in the dungeon quite literally. Ina deadpanned and I froze as I was about to write some kind of snappy one-liner, so I just behaved and wrote a simple request. I wish for my Familia's guild advisor to be of the more reasonable sort, discreet, and knowledgeable about the dungeon and its perils/opportunities. Then after filling out the rest of the paperwork during a mostly silent 10 or so minute period where I had a couple of questions about the small math test, they snuck in to see if I could actually do math, and Ina explained how yes, the fantasy land did have like a third or like 40% of the population being completely ignorant of how to read and do math beyond counting the coinage in front of them. But with Amazons and barbarians being a thing, I cannot blame the guild for wanting to get a metric of people, so any guild advisor they give to the new Familia can help them not get screwed over, as the guild gives the Familia's advisor a bonus every 3 months if said Familia survives for the first 5 years. Alright Jake, it seems all your paperwork is in order. Here is your guild ID that you will need to present in order to turn in your monster drops, Ina said, giving me a pretty standard identification card made out of some kind of bendable wood with my info on it, so I mimed putting it in my pocket but instead put it into my inventory. It was a pleasure. Ina, when can I expect news as to my Familia guild advisor? I asked, and Ina hummed in thought. Probably in 2 or 3 days, so I highly recommend you don't go into the dungeon before you actually get an advisor who will walk you through the dungeon's top 3 floors where newbies can flourish. Ina explained, and I smiled and nodded with all intentions of running into the dungeon after I left the guild anyway. But in order to not hurt Ina's feelings or just make her think I was an arrogant asshole who was going to refute her very smart advice, I didn't say that I was literally going to throw myself blind into the dungeon that regularly killed adventurers. Actually, now that I think about it more, that sounds like a stupid as hell idea. Well, I wish you to have a nice day then, Ina. I am going to go do a bit of looking around for dungeon supplies. I made up an excuse to get away from the guild, and the strict half-elf nodded as she sorted up all the paperwork I left behind. Leaving the guild, I continued on past it, and then I came to the most obvious landmark of the world of Damacy, the Tower of Babel that acted as the mega mall for rich Familia to set up its stores on its floors, as well as the wealthiest of deities having an apartment within its upper floors. But I was here for what lay below the Tower of Babel, the massive gaping pit with a spiral staircase that led down into the dungeon and its first floor. But going down the massive staircase was in of itself a life-changing experience, as with every step I took I saw literally thousands of adventurers going down into the dungeon or going up the staircase, and I could see plenty of them being injured, or worse, some people being literally carried by either stoic or crying Familia members, which made that person's fate look bleak. Other than the staircase and coming across my first humanoid corpses, I also saw the other end of the fence as rich or more powerful adventure groups took the elevator system that was made in the center of the pit, and whether it was going up or down, they always seemed to be of great cheer and optimism. Probably already lost the feelings of loss for one of their friends getting chewed up, I muttered as I saw another group taking the lift up who had obviously lost members or possibly looted weapons from some fallen adventure, as one dude had a sword and shield set and next to him was a massive battle axe that he was awkwardly lugging around.